Well, this topic is very, very near and dear to both Marisa and I. Most accurately is that as we go deeply into our soul, no matter where we are, no matter what's happening, we are nourished. And when we are really deeply in our soul and being nourished by our soul, as we start to see beauty everywhere, just everywhere. We start looking through those eyes. You know how they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder? Wow, that is so true. So that's what we would like to talk about and explore with you today. So we welcome everybody for coming and showing up. As soon as I can upload and download this recording, I will post it in case you want to hear any part of it again, or if there are people who couldn't join us at this time. We also, when Marisa and I talked, we really wanted to make this a gift for people. A gift because for some of us, the quiet time of being sort of isolated has been very fruitful and productive. And so we just wanted to extend some of that to you. Right. And it's also because it's a new year. And there's it's a time of new possibilities, time of possibilities that can help any of us raise our level of understanding and start living with greater well-being and be more nourished. So Marisa and I were talking, and she told me a story, and I said, "Oh my God, Marisa, that is so beautiful. Would you mind sharing that as we start today?" So here's Marisa and her story. Oh, I'm going to have to unmute you, I guess. You can just do it yourself. There you go.
Okay, perfect. So it's so lovely to be here and to share what is so close to my heart too. So starting with this story is actually a great way to show how deeply nature nourishes my soul and my heart and my lows and my highs. So yesterday I got some really bad news, and the first thing that I do is I put my coat on and my hat on, and I'm like, I'm going to the trees, I'm going to the heath, and that is my place where I'm always nurtured. So as I went there, I felt very heavy with this news that I had received. And getting there, I leant against one of my favorite trees, and I just looked out to this beautiful view. And as I was leaning, I just thought, oh, I'm being really supported by this tree. And I felt a gratitude for that holding. And actually, I realized that it was holding what I was going through. And then I looked at the tree, and it was so strong and big and tall, and I touched it, and I just thought, this is strength, and it's solid, and it connected me to my strength and the moments that I feel very strong. And I took a deep breath into that place, and I realized that it was helping me to deal with the sad news, and it softened me, and it softened the news. And I realized that in my strength, I can really hold this news. And again, I took a deep breath into this tree and I connected to my heart. So actually it brought me to a place of deeply connecting to myself instead of just being in the pain or the fears of this story. And I was really able to then disidentify into a stronger place where I could really nurture myself. And I realized that this connection with the tree allowed me to find my strength in this moment. So it was really healing. And actually I was able to leave with a very different view on the situation that I was in. And there was a different pain. There was a pain that I could hold differently because I tapped into my own strength via the tree. So I felt a lot of gratitude for that. And that's all about nourishing the soul.
Yeah.
And
I see it both ways. It's nourishing the soul, and it's the soul then nourishing us, and then we see even more beauty. And like when you recognize the strength in the tree, and then that sense where that strength and your strength were the same strength. Yeah. That's powerful.
It was powerful. And actually it showed me that we think we're very separate from nature. But actually, when we take time in that stillness with nature, there's so many connections that we can gain so much when we stop and really connect in that silence.
Yeah. I mean, it's so beautiful to understand that we have stillness inside of us. And when we connect with that, we connect with all of life. I'm gonna mute everybody again just for a second. Hold on. And Marisa, unmute yourself again, please. I've been thinking about the notion of soul food. You know, it's been a wonderful exploration ever since I met that wacky guy, Sid Banks, who had discovered this depth of being and how accessible it is to all of us. And that over and over again, he would share with us that as our minds become quiet, no matter where we are, no matter what's happening, it's like we drop into this place, our soul. We drop into this inner space. We drop into the quiet under and beyond our thinking. There's a lot of ways to talk about that, and everybody has experienced that over and over again because it's so ordinary. When our minds get quiet, there's a feeling of relaxation that starts to happen. We come down to earth into this quiet. So Sid would say things like, look for silence. He'll say things like this. I actually found a quote from Sid about this. He said, the soul is the only true source of spiritual nourishment. There are many ways to connect with and rekindle your relationship with your soul, but the most effective way is to rid yourself of the obstacles that come between you and your purity of thought. You can begin the process of nourishing the soul by living in the present moment, in the now, And if your mind wanders, don't take these thoughts too seriously. Just let them go. Realize that they are nothing more than fleeting thoughts. And you will soon be on your way to finding the peace of mind you seek, with loving feelings for yourself and others, bringing joy and contentment to your life. So I've been thinking about soul food, being nourished from within. And I love, Marisa, in your story about so often when we go out in nature, it doesn't automatically mean we're going to drop into our souls, because I've been in nature plenty of times where I'm thinking about a lot of things and I experience no beauty. And with my wife, if I'm experiencing a lot of thinking, there's no beauty. So Sid says you have to look beyond your thinking to discover beauty. And sometimes just walking outside, because of the proportions and grace and inherent beauty of nature, it almost makes it easier. There's less and less obnoxious distractions, and it makes it easier, as Marisa and I have experienced so many times, to just drop into the soul where nourishment starts coming, peace of mind, freedom from the limitation of our thinking, deeper feelings that arise naturally that uplift us. That's nourishment. Deeper feelings that uplift, and new and fresh perception of life that's unfiltered by the contamination of our thinking. And then we develop this love affair with beauty. That's how Marisa and I connected. We were up on Salt Spring to hear Sid Banks one time, and Elsie Spitto and Chip, and we met over coffee. And it became very apparent that we had a love affair with beauty.
I would like to add here that and that's so true, I have a total love affair with beauty. And it's beauty that has allowed me to slow down my thoughts and has allowed me to sit on a bench and just look with different eyes, and actually allowed my thoughts to slow down. And maybe like they could sit next to me, because I was just really connecting with the beauty and appreciating it. And that has been one of my greatest teachers, to allow me to slow down and slow the thoughts down, to get more into the present moment.
Yeah. It helps us get more and more familiar with that place that's inside of us, that's with us, whether we know it or not. It really does.
And like you, Dick, and it doesn't, sometimes I go to the woods or the beach and I'm full of thoughts too.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can go into that quiet space quicker than others. But I've learned to be really grateful for what is a part of our world and is forever present there. And I never get tired of actually going to the same woods or the same beach, because it's been such a great teacher for me, in order to just, slow down and to pause. Because we're always so busy in our life, always so busy doing for others, doing for our work, for our home, our families, our communities. But then it's in the pausing when you can stop and just look where the nourishment starts to fill you up from the inside.
Yeah, beautiful. It's almost like a little secret, that in the deep quiet of our soul, we can't help but to see beauty. Can't help but to gain nourishment. The number of times when I could feel the busyness of my mind, and in a moment of quiet, it makes sense to go outside. Sometimes it makes sense to listen to my favorite music. Sometimes it makes sense to sit quietly. Sometimes it makes sense to call a friend. But very often, where wisdom itself takes me is out into outer beauty. Isn't it interesting? As I go into inner beauty and it moves me toward outer beauty, it becomes this cycle. Mm. And I've told this story before. I'll just mention it briefly. I had COVID for 2.5 weeks. I couldn't think. I was in pain constantly. I was as sick as I've ever been in my life. And on day 18, I woke up and I had no thinking on my mind. None for about 4 days. I didn't hear myself talking. I didn't notice any thinking happening. I was so present. And the first place my wisdom took me, as soon as I, for the first time in 2.5 weeks, had energy, the very first place my wisdom took me was outside. I couldn't wait to get outside. And as soon as I stepped outside and just looked at the trees around me in my driveway and the blue sky, it just opened. The more our mind opens, the more our heart opens, the more our soul nourishes, and the more we look through the eyes of love. And so we can't help but to see beauty. And I just felt as I walked along, physically I was quite weak, but I didn't even notice my body. I was so present. I just noticed beauty. The bird singing brought tears to my eyes. I stood there and it was the most beautiful music I had heard. The wind on my cheek was the most intimate caress. I never used the word intimacy or intimate, the intimacy of presence, until I had these 4 days of feeling an enormous intimacy with life. Right? And so one of the gifts of having an understanding that allows us to know that we can't find that peace of mind in our personal thinking. One of the gifts of knowing that our thinking creates our tension, stress, and upset is that we become more and more compelled to let go of what Sid says are the only obstacles in the way of us being nourished by our soul. And to move in that direction of a quieter mind. And then one of the gifts is that stillness and silence, peace of mind that Marisa, you were talking about. Another gift is what Sid talked about, is in that silence, there's a deeper feeling. It's the feeling of connection, love, joy, peace, compassion, gratitude. Right? There's those feelings in that silence. They're free gifts. in that silence. The other gift is the one we're talking about today. Our senses come alive. They're uncontaminated by thought. Our senses come alive, right? So our mind opens up and we have peace. We fall into our soul, which is vast open space. The stillness and silence of that space. The movement of life energy itself expanding is love. And every one of our senses starts singing when we're wide open, not caught up in personal thought, in concepts, ideas, beliefs. Freedom. But that sensory awakeness, that's what I find is the connection to beauty, where it's all one. That's what I loved about your story, Marisa, is that you saw the strength in the tree, and the strength is you as one and connected, and it was the strength of life itself showing up in form.
And that's exactly it. And you realize that the gap between you and what you see, there's very little gap because it's all one. And yes, and when you speak about, being in the beauty, and it takes you to the gifts that you have inside, the wisdom and your inner love. I know that I can sit on a bench and just look at the clouds and spend a long time just looking and being, because it does connect me to the gifts inside, the love. And you then feel your heart expanding. Or when you look at a flower and you just see the beauty in this flower and spend time just looking at the gift of a flower, or a rainbow, or the rain, when you listen to the rain, and when you just, your senses, you're right, your senses touch on so many different things that your thoughts then lessen, and you feel you connect to your wisdom, or just to your heart, you'll connect to your heart. I remember you told me a story once, Dicken, and this is one of my favorite stories that you told me. So we were talking about thought and how thoughts can be so busy and constantly in our minds, and how can we step aside from that? And you said to me, well, think of the sky. Think of the sky, Marisa. The sky has so many birds flying in it all the time. And the sky can't turn to a pigeon and say, hold on a minute, pigeon, I'm not happy with you being in my sky. Please don't fly here.
Yeah.
The pigeon isn't going to listen. So the sky can't choose the birds. Like, we can't often choose our thoughts, but we do have a choice to how we attach to the thoughts. Like the sky, eventually you said, well, Marisa, the sky just in the end watches which birds fly past. And we can do the same with our thoughts and watch our thoughts fly past and not necessarily attached to them. And the birds now always remind me of my thoughts flying past. So I don't need to attach to them. I can actually just watch them and then just settle beyond them. And that story has always been a wonderful story for me, of really actually the power that we have to choose what we do with our thoughts and go beyond them to our hearts or to our wisdom. And that's the one thing from the 3 principles that has really given me a lot of healing.
Yeah. It's nice to know that it doesn't even matter what mood we're in. We could be in a very low mood, feeling horrible. This happened to me daily. In a low mood, and either I'm in my thinking or I'm present to life. So Sid would say, we're a thought away at every moment from being caught up in and identified with painful thinking, or in a sense, I loved how you said not attached to that thinking, Marisa, in a sense, being back from it and much more open, more and more open, where there's an allowing that allows every thought and feeling to flow through us. And in that openness, there is still stillness. And the heart opens up. And we have common sense. Even in that low mood, we have common sense.
Mm-hmm.
We have appreciation for what's around us. We start to feel that connection, that intimacy that we're talking about. So I can be in a low mood with my wife, and if I'm in my head, I won't feel close to her. I expect that to be true. It doesn't throw me like it used to. I know if I don't feel close to her, I go, oh yeah, well, I'm in my head. That's where I am. Because when I'm not in my head, I feel close to her no matter what mood I'm in. I'm looking as she's out the window with our puppy in the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel just that sense of connection, that intimacy, that beauty. Intimacy is built into true presence. This is why talking about the principles it can often feed the intellect. Sid knew this. Sid hated to talk about the principles. I would say 5% of the time around Sid, he talked about the principles because people would ask him. The greatest gift of being around a teacher like Sid had nothing to do with his words, some, maybe 5% to do with his words. Most of it just had to do with here's somebody living in that state, walking around wide open like a little kid. He constantly was saying, oh, this is the most beautiful cup of tea this is the greatest cup of tea I've ever had. And he'd say that for every cup of tea because he was in that space where it was new and fresh. He'd say, oh, I love your house. Look at that painting. It's so incredible. He couldn't help but to see through the eyes of love and beauty and appreciation and being with someone who is living that way is very different than talking about the principles and having little moments. It did more to teach us. So if you went to visit Sid and you'd say, Sid, I'm confused about consciousness. Can you talk to me about consciousness? You know what he'd do? He'd stand up, go get the dog leash, get his dog, and walk outside. And you're sitting there going, and I guess I'll go with him. And you follow him into the woods, and he walks through the woods, and he doesn't say a word. And he's just looking around in that quiet place of presence and beauty. He walks over to the ocean. He just stands there silently looking at the ocean, and tears start flowing down his face. He would often say to us, you guys are going so fast. You're not getting that nourishment. Right? And so sometimes it meant cutting back the amount of work we were doing. Sometimes it meant just spending less time thinking about our lives, thinking about ourselves. We started seeing more clearly the difference between thinking about life and the principles and dropping in to presence, connection. intimacy. I could talk forever with my wife about relationship and not reach that level. Or I can at times drop into that space where intimacy is part of presence. Senses come alive. No matter what mood she's in, no matter what has been happening, I see her through different eyes. The eyes of beauty are a soul gift. And the deeper you go into that stillness, that quiet, that presence, that ordinariness, our birthright, our nature, our true nature, our connected nature to the rest of life, the more we look through those eyes. Marisa and I are pen pals. We write back and forth to each other, but I would say 90% of our correspondence are what, Marisa?
Pictures
Of
birds and trees and all that's in nature.
It's like I go for a walk with Marisa.
Yeah, we do a lot
We
of
go into the
walking
woods. She
together.
shows me, she says, look at that bird, Dicken. And then we stand there looking at that bird, and this picture of these two little birds poking out of the hole in the tree, and or she'll be on the beach. And
yeah, I look at a tree and I think of you straight away. But it's, when you talk about intimacy, like you help me realize that actually I can sit on the beach for hours and actually I'm becoming intimate with myself. And I'd never realized that before until you just speaking now, that, there's the intimacy with beauty and with the ocean or the forest, but it's also the intimacy with ourselves and getting to know who we are, maybe not from our thoughts, but from that deeper place of intimacy. Yes, it's a feeling. It's more of a feeling or a gentleness. Gentleness you can feel when you just sit back and you give yourself time. This time in nature, like we do when we look at trees, and you focused on the beauty, and then you can again look at the beauty, feel the beauty in your own self. Such a beautiful mirror all the time, that gentleness, that intimacy. It's a beautiful word to use for nature.
yeah, gentle.
Gentle.
I like that sense. Or the Buddhists will often talk about tender-heartedness. Tender-heartedness. That a sense of tenderness, a sense of gentleness. I can see when I get into my racing mind, I get more impatient and harsher, and I lose that gentleness. So those feelings now become an invitation to go to my drop-in center.
Yeah,
to go
that's nice.
to drop into my soul. I've lost my nourishment. I'm hungry. Where I start grasping, wanting, needing. And there's this being nourished. But I like what you're saying too about our intimacy with self. Sid preferred self, capital S, to God, or even mine. That was the word he sort of resonated. Big self, little self is just pure identification with the content of our thinking. Big self is when we go deeper and discover there's this vastness that actually is the vastness of all of life. It's the universe. And the metaphor that I'm fond of is, for years living in my head, becoming more and more of a chronic thinker, I experienced then separation from people in life, that I'm different. And I would compare, and I'd be better or worse, or not as good, or that's all insecurity. And as Sid sort of reintroduced me, not only to my soul, but what it means to live in your soul and to visit the intellect, because it's a beautiful tool, but not to live in it, to visit, to utilize wisely. He said we use that personal mind wisely, but we're not meant to live in it. And you drop in and there's feeling and spaciousness and beauty. So it's like, I thought of myself as a wave on the ocean now, as a little wave always saying, oh, I want to be a bigger wave. And so what courses can I take that'll help me become bigger and better? That was the whole self-development movement that I immersed myself in for the first 40 years of my life before I met Sid. 33 years ago, I met Sid. And sure, I would have moments of peace and beauty and love, but I didn't live there or live in that direction. I visited. And thank God I visited. It was keeping me alive, keeping me going, keeping me in a healthier relationship with my wife and kids and friends. Right? But then this notion of Sid says, you're not the wave. You're more than a wave. You're the ocean. Vast. We are part of this infinite field of energy, and we're dancing into form. Right? So intimacy happens, tenderness happens, goodness happens, beauty happens when any of us fall beyond the influence and limitations of concepts, ideas, beliefs. Sid's book, Beyond Beliefs, is when we touch that space, we can't help but to start experiencing a greater connection. We don't become connected. We become more aware of the connection that's always there. The ocean is always connected to every wave. So we feel a greater connection to every wave. That's what some people call unconditional love. Peace that passes understanding. A joy not dependent upon objects. Right? Gifts of the soul that allow us to see through the eyes of beauty. So we start seeing beauty in a cup of coffee, in sometimes I'm watching TV and I start thinking about TV, and I can feel that smallness happening. And I don't like to live in that feeling of smallness. So the feeling of tension becomes friendly reminder that there's more here than that. And I just look up and look out a window, and all of a sudden it's like vast again. My eyes change. When I come back to the movie on TV, I'm not so concentrated. I'm wide open. There's no concentration in the now. It doesn't mean you can't focus on something, but there's Like when I played sports, I'd focus on things, but I'd be wide open. So that's in wide openness, we discover our soul, and then we start being nourished, and then we start seeing through different eyes. The trees come alive. Oh my God. It's so funny. Marisa can send me a picture of a tree, and it's like, I'm right in that feeling. They become reminders of what's true. This deeper connection.
I would love to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to add something to that, because when I see the trees, and I've been reading a lot about trees, what touches me too, and what I learn from these trees, is that they're in community with each other. And the trees don't say you can't do this or you can't do that. They look after each other. They need each other. They support each other. So that shows me how much community is important as well. So it's not only about me, but it's about my community, this community, all the communities I'm in, that we support each other. And actually trees support each other. And because if one tree wasn't there, then that one tree it prevents the wind from going through to the other trees, or many other things like that. But so there's such wisdom in the trees, and they offer this wisdom as well around how we can be with each other in community.
I love that sense of community. I've been thinking a lot about Native American spirituality, and they talk about the Great Spirit. And then they say everything in form is spirit tree, spirit fish, spirit dog. And only in the deep quiet do we sense both simultaneously, paradoxically, separate spirit and one spirit.
Yeah.
I can see your waveness and the beauty of it. And I can experience our oceanness and the intimacy of our connection.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't make connections with people. We fall out of what's in the way of experiencing the connection that's always there. It's a different way of thinking about love. It's not, I'm going to love you. I'm going to fall into a place where I experience a loving connection that's always there, that's true, and in truth, there is that connection. And even with people that are doing horrible things, I fall into this space, and the feeling of connection is compassion. Sid felt so compassionate for anybody who was suffering. They're doing, he would go, they're doing the best they can. That's not condoning or accepting their behavior. He's just saying they're doing the best they can. But that sense of community, common unity that you're talking about, Marisa, I love that. Can you say anything more about that? Because that sense of rediscovering true community is, we're at a critical point in time, I think, in terms of whether we continue to go towards we're separate individuals only, or we are a common unity that values the beauty of diversity and individual differences.
Well, I think that's over this lockdown period has actually, for myself, become almost obvious that we need community even more than we ever have, because being separate and not being able to hug each other or see each other or smell each other, there's a separateness that almost doesn't work. We're all longing to be held and be in community. And it makes sense that we come together. And even on Zoom now, I mean, okay, so we can't actually hug each other, but there's a really beautiful sense of us being together and nurturing each other.
Yeah.
And that's so holding. And we need that. Humanity needs that. We each need that love and that tenderness and that support. In the olden days, you used to have loads of communities where uncles and aunties and grandparents would look after the children, and the parents could do many other things, whereas now parents find themselves mostly on their own, doing everything. So that sense of holding and belonging is less now than it used to be. So I think community is essential to our well-being and, yeah, our sense of wellness. And we support each other, like the trees support each other. And there's so much beauty in that. And when our community gets together, you feel uplifted and supported, and then the heart opens and you go, also you fall into that place of, you know, that safety place, that place of wellness. We have each other's backs, as the trees do. The trees have each other's backs. I mean, there's an underworld of all their roots. And if one tree a mile away hasn't got any water or food, another tree will know and it will go to them. So there's knowing what each other needs. So I believe community is really essential to us being more in our essence and being held.
With all that's going on in the world right now, the question keeps coming up for so many of us is, what can we do to help create a better world? And most often we look at just sort of changing form. And Sid would speak to us about this because he was concerned with how the world would change. And he said there's only one way: go within, touch this space that raises your level of consciousness. Is the only way, because we're all connected. If you raise your level of consciousness, you are helping to raise the overall level of consciousness of humanity, because we're all connected. It's all one ecosystem. As one part gets healthier, right? It was hard to get my head around that for so long. There's a kind of soul activism that's founded in what Marisa is talking about a sense of common unity, community, where we look toward compassion, cooperation, working together. We look in that direction. Sid says you go inside, you literally are bringing more consciousness into the world, more peace, more joy, more love, more beauty. There have been so many times I've gotten really upset. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. We're going to feel everything. Got really upset, but I know then that when I used that upset as an invitation to common unity, to come home, as Natasha and I are fond of talking about, that in the coming home, we find a unity where, as the Native Americans talk about, all my relations, where everybody is my relative. You could say everybody is my friend, where human beings as humans are the beauty of diversity, and as being is the one soul we all share. The one being. So we're one being and human separate beings. We're waves and ocean, and there's beauty in both. We're trees and spirit. Both. We have bodies, and our body is the universe in the way that the wave is the ocean. Our body is the universe. That's the message that brings us to community, to cooperation, to collaboration, to compassion. Because it's inevitable people suffer when they're caught in thought, identified with it, become very opinionated, and lose their sense of connection to the whole. That's real suffering. That's, read the last chapter of Missing Link, where Sid talks about when we lose our connection to wisdom, we don't really lose it, but we lose sight of it. That's the source of all the social problems that exist right now. It's also the source of all the personal problems we have. That's what happens when I get into trouble with somebody. I get in my head, I get wedded to my ideas, I lose sense of my spaciousness, my stillness, my beauty, the nourishment, the wisdom that is teaching me to recognize our unity, no matter how different things seem, So then we experience everybody as a friend. We're all one family. That whole sense comes alive. It's not me versus you. It's us and we. Marisa, shall we open it up?
Absolutely.
We talked and said we want to be sure that we leave time for people to share either what you're hearing that's coming alive for you, or to ask any questions you might have. And see if you can unmute yourself. If you can't raise your hand, then I'll do my best to call on you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say something. I don't have any questions, but I know Marisa, I've known her for a long time, and I didn't know you. I just wanted to thank you both. It's been so touching. So all the things that you said really resonated with me. So I just wanted to thank you to say I'm really, really grateful to be here tonight.
Thanks, Manuela.
Yeah, I can't see you, Manuela, but that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Fiona wants to speak. Perfect. Hi, Fiona.
I don't have a question, because the beauty of this moment is that you invite us to be this moment, and so there is no question. But I'd love to offer just two words that I had the sensation of flowing with you into. Two words that came up: elegance. That the beauty of the soul is so incredibly elegant, and also I love that my pendants tender soul, to be tender, to look after, to soften. There was another beautiful the word was luxuriate. When we become timeless, that being able to luxuriate in the moment that just goes on and on and on. So really, how amazing to listen to you both and just be in this. And thank you so much.
Oh, that's beautiful, Fiona. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona.
Yeah, and that's beautiful to me because it's like we can drop into that stillness and that space just by listening to each other and being in the feeling of when we're in our hearts, and you feel that it's the feeling, and you always can get there when you just have the time to listen. So that's really beautiful. Such lovely words.
I wanted to say, I wondered if either of you guys had read the beautiful books from Herman Hesse, where he talks about trees as sanctuary. And Dicken, you touched on it, and I think Marisa very eloquently expressed the spiritual nature of trees. And I think for centuries, people have definitely associated trees with spirituality. There's been so many ceremonies about trees, and recently I was teaching a 15-year-old, and we were discussing how the women in India in the 1700s wanted to stop a forest being cut down, and all the women in the village joined hands around the trees, and over 300 were shot. But they stopped it. and I just think it's interesting that people are prepared to do so much to save trees, because they know it's an intuition and it's a deep connection, and we know that trees are very valuable to us.
That's such a powerful story, Dina. Really powerful.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah, I posted a picture of that once on Facebook, Dina. That's where the
tree
term
huggers.
tree huggers came from. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
I just think it's an amazing testimony to how much nature really means to us. And the Japanese, of course, with forest bathing, you know, it's been proven to just spending 20 minutes a day with trees lowers blood pressure and just makes it's like free medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I read once that even if you can't go outside, or if you don't look out to trees, even to have a picture next to you of beauty, of trees, or whatever you find beautiful, that also is medicine. So taking time out every day to just breathe in trees and the nature and the fresh air, or seeing pictures, is so important for our wellness. Thank you, Dina, for all your stories. I've recently met these guides who take you around the heath, and they know all the trees. They know all the grandma trees and the father tree and the mother tree. And I walk past these trees, and I would never have known the story behind these amazing trees. And then I learned the stories, and some of these trees are hollow, and you can go inside. And going inside a hollow tree and being in this tree is so magnificent. or, you know, you discover things about trees. And so these guys know all the stories of the trees. And it was so touching for me to stop, to really stop, and to pay attention to these trees that have been around for hundreds of years.
Wonder if it's okay for me to speak. I just wanted to say that the word wonder comes to me. Just how extraordinary nature is. And I have a bit of a science background, and I still read a bit about science. And I'm always blown away by what extraordinary things they discover. Nature grows all of itself. It creates strong structures or things that are more flexible and stronger than metal, or structures they use in making bridges, and I don't know, and they're beautiful. These things that they make are beautiful, and I just think it's extraordinary that it's all just grown. So there's something to me about that, just the wonder of the extraordinariness of the variety. Yeah, it can just blow me away sometimes. Really taking me in. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. So my word is wonder. Thank you. I've enjoyed the conversation. So thank you both very much.
So welcome.
Yeah, I love that word too, Gail, that wonder. I watched my little 1-year-old granddaughter live in wonder. Eyes wide open, fully present, living in wonder. I think that's where gratitude arises naturally. You experience beauty, you're grateful for that gift. You experience peace of mind, you're grateful for that. We're given these things freely, and the only entrance requirement is that we temporarily step away from our intellect. We close the laptop. We stop staring at the screen of our thought content and the story it's weaving. Right? Then we experience wonder and awe, gratitude.
I'd like to share a story with my new puppy. My new puppy taught me wonder as well, and presence and love. So I would actually just watch my puppy, and he's so present in the moment, and has such a stillness, and will just look at all of us and just watch us, and a gentleness and a lovingness in such presence. And actually he taught me a lot about love, unconditional love. And it's been such a beautiful experience to watch my puppy he's got no he has expectations, but very limited, and he's very patient and he's very present. And so it has allowed me to become present. Just, like watching the robin on the tree, watching you. So I watch Oakley watching me, and we're both really present in that moment. It's a very gentle moment that opens my heart each time when we just watch each other.
Yeah, there is something to that. The presence evokes presence. Our presence, in a sense, it communicates safety because we're not in judgment and agendas and tension, which makes it unsafe. And it can go both ways. When people were with Sid Banks, they'd feel so safe they could dare go into the unknown, the not knowing of presence, let go of questions and ideas and beliefs. I would go with 10 questions for Sid, and in a few minutes of presence, I would have no questions. Isn't that interesting? Presence evokes presence. I saw Sid in front of a room of doctors who are can often be extremely busy-minded and distracted. He was in an auditorium, and he starts talking in his presence. It's all of a sudden everybody stopped being distracted by their own thinking and being on their phones, and it got so quiet, it was unbelievable. We are an ecosystem and we're connected. There's some talk in the principal community that nothing on the outside can affect us. That's a misunderstanding of what Sid was saying. He's saying when we're in our thinking, it creates a sense of duality inside and outside. When we fall out of our thinking, there is no outside, there is no inside. There's just all one. But it's an ecosystem. And as one part of any ecosystem gets healthier, the whole system is affected and gets healthier because it's all connected. You see, so it is true that my experience is created from thought, but we are being affected by what's around us, which is why it's helpful to put up beauty in your house. Surround yourself with things you think as being beautiful. Right? My wife's an artist, and she has such an eye for beauty. So it's very important for her to have beauty around her. Right? It's hard for me to clutter the place. If I get busy-minded, my space becomes more cluttered. Yeah. But this being able to have the eyes for beauty is such a gift from Source. It's such a gift. To be able to sit anywhere, even a place that externally at first seems really ugly. You know, walking down a city street, and maybe you're in a part of town that's where the street is cluttered, and in quiet, you'll begin to sense beauty no matter where you are. I've seen beauty in a piece of paper rolling down the street. See, that in another state of mind, it'd be say, I can't believe people just throw their trash all over this place. I've been annoyed with my puppy at one moment, and the next moment think the same thing is the cutest thing I've ever seen. We tend to think of our senses in our head. It's nice to begin to experience our senses in our heart. I'm seeing from my heart. I'm feeling, touching, tasting, or from your soul. Same for me. The heart's not the physical heart. It's the experience of spacious presence with warmth, with a feeling. Feel that feeling of connection. That's the true heart, the very nature of us and the very nature of the universe. It's interesting when you say, "Who are you?" A lot of people point to their head. You know, we get so identified with being uptight. If we live there, that's our insecurity, tension, stress, and upset. When we drop out of everything we're thinking, Sid says, if you touch that space beyond your thinking just for one moment, we're one thought away from it. But if you can touch that space, drop into that space, he said, I guarantee you something beautiful will start emerging. Guarantee you. Right? That's the nourishment of the soul. That's why my 5-year-old granddaughter said, Poppy, Poppy, I have magic eyes. I say, what do you mean? He goes, everywhere I look, things sparkle. Right? That's seeing through those eyes. Anybody else have something you'd like to share or ask about?
I can share one thing. I'm Philip, and I'm from Sweden. In the Swedish language, we have a word that is called själaglad. And I understand that you don't understand it, but so it's actually 2 words. And the first part, it's soul, and the second part, it's happy. And to me, it really summarizes everything in just one word. I mean, it's about being happy from the soul, not being happy from, some thinking that comes and goes and so on. It's a much deeper happiness.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that, being happy from the soul, soul happy.
I like that much deeper than happiness.
Yeah. I know that takes me definitely to my place when I'm in nature and I pause and I allow myself to be in that soul happy place, or when I'm by the ocean. I think it's about us maybe finding our place where we can just stop and feel our connection. Because we all have different beauty and different places that we connect to.
Even though it's not a technique, to begin to understand that metaphorically there's a place within us where we're at peace, where we experience beauty and love. Sid would often use words like look for or step into. Look for quiet. It's not trying to create quiet. It's look for the quiet that's always there underneath the noise of our thinking. Look for quiet. Settle into it. Relax into it. Be it. Look for it. Sense it. It's a direction to move psychologically. It's not a technique. It's like falling asleep, metaphorically, is going from a busy mind to a quiet mind to beyond a quiet mind to sleep. We don't think of that as a technique. I don't do it. But we could say, if you go to sleep, just relax your thinking and just open up and relax into your bed. And if we're going to use words, sometimes we can talk that way. It's not giving advice or trying to get a technique. It's saying, get familiar with the feel of that. So all during the day, I just stop and rest. And I'm very sensitive to the feeling of where my feeling starts to open. Even if I'm feeling hurt or sadness, it's just energy. And without being bound by our thinking, that feeling starts to open. And it's nourishing. And I'm being uplifted in spirit, renewed in spirit. The being present in a deeper feeling of happiness where sadness becomes happiness because it's energy opening instead of contracting. When I hold the thought, it contracts energy. Tension, stress, upset. I'm misusing the intellect, as Sid would say. I'm over relying on the words, the ideas, the beliefs that I have. So Sid would say there's only one way to go beyond all of thoughts, concepts, beliefs. Now that's a metaphor, but it's like saying when we fall asleep, we go beyond the thoughts, concepts, metaphor. Head in that direction, but don't go as far. Just being fully present is being fully relaxed in the moment as it is. And then the gifts start coming. The gifts start coming. They're just given freely. So that's why we have gratitude. Thank you for the gift that's given freely. You don't have to deserve it. You can have it has nothing to do with your personality or your past or your life. Freely given gifts. And today we've been focusing on our senses wake up and we experience beauty. And then we see beauty and then that helps us. It's a full circle. The presence of nature and our presence meet as one and reinforce each other. And it's a beautiful exchange.
Guys, Josie and I are really taken by that Swedish word that you said, Philip. Could you pronounce it again? Because we want to know how to say it properly.
Yeah, of course. So it's själa glad, soul happy. Själa glad.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For me, the word you used, dicken, rest, is a beautiful gift. Because I remember when we were having a chat and we spoke about meditation, and actually you helped me realize that a lot of the time what I was doing was deeply resting.
Yeah.
And what a gift it was to allow myself to rest.
Yeah.
And that rest also just could breathe differently and be open to the wisdom that came. If it came, or it didn't need to come, it was just resting in that moment.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very beautiful gift, to rest. We don't rest, well, it's, we don't rest very much. I hear people always saying, I don't rest enough. And the gift to just rest, to just stop and to be, takes us to that place of nurture as well.
Yeah. Resting in the now doesn't require anything of us. No effort, no trying, no getting somewhere, no being someone better or different. The Tibetan Buddhists sometimes say the highest form of meditation is very simply resting and relaxing. That's it. It's ordinary. It's not even a doing, it's an allowing. Just like I allow myself to fall asleep. I don't do it. Resting. It's the opposite of searching for a better feeling, searching for something better or different than this moment as you are. It's just thinking that keeps us unsettled. When I fall asleep, I don't think about feeling better, or I won't fall asleep. Feeling better is the gift that happens when I'm resting, allowing, being. Then it's natural.
And actually that's really beautiful, because with resting and allowing ourselves to rest without any judgment about it does allow you to surrender and to just, your body rests, you rest.
I used to try and do surrender, and now I love the word surrender. It's just letting go of the hold I have on ideas. And it's instead of focusing on anything, it's opening more and more opening, more and more opening, more and more opening, fully present to everything in front, behind, around. And then the gifts are given freely. Feeling and sensing gifts are given freely. That's generosity of spirit. That's why some people say God is a loving God. All we have to do is surrender our ego, and we're always moved in a nourishing, loving direction.
May I drop in?
Yeah, please.
Alex, that one is Marisa. So the label doesn't confuse you.
Yeah.
I really like what you said about, I don't remember which one of you said, it's communion. That we are like, we can drop into that communion, feel the union, and then we can help each other much better. Be there. And it's, yeah, I think you said it, Dick, that we get so individualistic, and we can be together and love each other's differences. And I've been following the media a lot these last couple of days, and we can share some things and hook some things, driving myself insane. I've also noticed that my job, I'm a computer scientist. Last summer, when I was just really relaxed and it's like there was a difference when I start working again. My guess is I followed Dicken's example from too many years ago when I lived in my intellect too much. I don't know. Sometimes I feel difficult to find that connection, that sharing in this so modern world where we live in our house. Last year we didn't see each other so much. Yeah. I talk more to the computer than I talk to it. But it's really helpful to know all out, at least try to surrender. Or don't try.
Thank you for sharing that. Being in community and talking with each other and being there to bounce off each other and nurture each other. Yeah. I like that very much, that sense of community, and even coming together tonight and building this community for the time we had is a gift and has been so nurturing, definitely to my heart. You know, we're all together and we're talking about something that is so beautiful, and that it will keep reminding us, so we remember to take that time to rest and to walk in nature and to see things differently, and then to connect to ourselves. So it is really beautiful to have community, the strength of community supporting each other.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Marisa. I just want to say I've loved being with you all tonight, or today, or this morning, wherever you are.
Yeah.
Love being with you. May we all find common unity in our experience. Ordinary, it's just ordinary. Being present is the most ordinary thing in the world that doesn't take any effort. All the other things we do take effort. So, ordinary. Any final words, Marisa?
Well, I actually just love what you said about being ordinary. I think that's just a gift, to be ordinary and to allow ourselves just to be who we are, whatever that is a gift, to rest in who we are and to just show up in our hearts.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'll see if I can't get the recording out soon. Marisa, thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you too.
We've known each other for some time, so it's been fun.
I could listen to you for hours.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, Dicken, for your wisdom and all your beautiful teachings. Very grateful.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dicken. Thank you, Marisa. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You're so welcome.